My name is Claire Whittaker. I'm 32 years old. And the first person who lied to me on my wedding day was my mother. She texted me at exactly 3:11 p.m. 14 minutes before I was supposed to walk down the aisle. Traffic is ridiculous, sweetheart, but we're almost there. To anyone else, it sounded loving, normal. A mother trying to reassure her daughter, but to me, it sounded rehearsed, polished, practiced, like a line she had used before because she had. I was standing in the bridal suite of a restored greenhouse in Asheville, North Carolina. Glass walls glowing gold from the late afternoon sun, jasmine climbing the beams. Soft music humming in the distance. Everything was beautiful, everything was perfect. Everything except the door. I kept looking at it, waiting. Around me were women who loved me. Naomi adjusting my veil. My college roommate steaming wrinkles from my dress. Someone fixing my hairpins for the third time just to stay busy. They had shown up early. They had shown up prepared. They had shown up for me. And still, my eyes kept drifting to the entrance, waiting for people who had never truly arrived for me in my entire life. I had spent 18 months designing museum exhibits. I knew how to build experiences, how to make moments feel meaningful, how to preserve memories people would carry forever. And somehow, I still believed my own parents might finally help me create one worth keeping. That was my first mistake. My bouquet was already in my hands. Cream silk ribbon wrapped perfectly around the stems. Every flower placed exactly how I wanted it. I had chosen everything. The venue, the lighting, the menus, the guest list. Not because I'm controlling, but because I learned early in life. If I didn't build things myself, they didn't get built for me at all. The music had already been delayed once. The coordinator knocked softly. "Do you want to hold the ceremony another 5 minutes?" I smiled. That same practiced smile daughters learn when they're trying not to embarrass themselves in public. "Of course," I said, "let's wait." That was the moment it hit me, not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly and completely. If the happiest day of my life still depended on whether my parents bothered to show up, then maybe I had never really been free of them at all. My fiancé, Owen, was already standing at the altar. Under a ceiling of warm lights and climbing jasmine, waiting, choosing me, fully, without hesitation, without conditions. And still in my head I kept hearing that text, "Almost there." That phrase followed me my entire life. "Almost proud of you, almost enough, almost chosen." My throat tightened, not because I was nervous to get married. I was nervous about stepping into the same old family story in a prettier dress. You know the kind of story I mean. The one where nobody says out loud who matters more, because they've been showing you for so long they don't need words anymore. In my family, my sister Lauren was the event. I was the support staff. Always just outside the frame. 2 years earlier, my parents had thrown her a wedding outside Charleston. It looked like something out of a luxury magazine. White peonies everywhere, imported linens. A string quartet at sunset, custom dance floor, perfect, expensive, unforgettable. I know exactly how much they spent. $160,000, not including the rehearsal dinner. My mother gave a 20-minute speech that night, 20 full minutes. She cried, she laughed, she told stories. She called Lauren radiant, elegant, gifted, impossible not to love. My father stood there holding a champagne glass, smiling like he had built something extraordinary. At one point he said, "Some daughters just know how to make a family proud." The room laughed softly, warmly, approvingly, and me, I was standing near the catering table, smiling politely while a server asked if I was part of the planning team. That was almost funny, almost, because in a way I always had been. I was the one fixing problems, running errands, picking up forgotten details, smoothing over tension, staying late, holding everything together. That was my role, useful, reliable, invisible. So when Owen and I got engaged, I made myself a promise. I wouldn't beg for excitement. I wouldn't chase approval. I wouldn't build my wedding around a fantasy that my parents might suddenly become different people. We chose a greenhouse, warm, alive, intimate. We kept the guest list small. Only people who actually mattered. I paid for my own dress. Owen and I split everything else. Every detail, every choice, every moment was ours, my parents'. Their only real contribution was a sentence my mother repeated any time someone asked. "Oh, we're just letting Claire do her little style." Her little style. That's how she described the most important day of my life. Meanwhile, every year on Lauren's anniversary, she reposted videos from her wedding. With captions like, "Still the gold standard," "Some days can never be topped," and then she would text me things that sounded helpful if you didn't know her tone. "Are you sure a greenhouse won't feel too casual? Are you sure people still do seated dinners for small weddings? Are you sure your dress photographs well without cathedral lighting?" Every question carried the same message. Lauren did it better. And the worst part, I had trained myself to absorb it, like weather, smile, redirect, move on, be easy, be understanding, be the daughter who doesn't need too much. But there's only so long you can survive on emotional scraps before you start recognizing the pattern. Have you ever looked back at your life and realized you weren't too sensitive? You weren't dramatic, you weren't asking for too much, you were just the only one expected to live on less. The knock came again, softer this time, more careful. But this time, the coordinator wasn't alone, and everything was about to change. The coordinator stepped into the room slowly, carefully, like someone carrying something fragile or dangerous. Behind her stood a valet, maybe 19, nervous, keys looped around his fingers, shoulders stiff like he already knew he didn't belong in this moment. My stomach dropped before he even spoke. Not because I knew what he was about to say, but because something in me recognized it. I stepped forward before anyone could stop me. "Did you see my parents arrive?" He nodded. "Quick, too quick." Like he wished that was the end of it. Relief hit me. Instant, automatic, stupid. Of course they were here. Of course there was an explanation, and then he kept talking. "They pulled up about 40 minutes ago." 40 minutes. They had been here, while I waited, while I checked the door, while I kept smiling like everything was normal. I felt my chest loosen just slightly until he said the next part. "They stayed in the car for a few minutes." Something inside me paused. Not broke, paused. Then asked if this was the only entrance. The room felt quieter, like sound itself was pulling away. And then they asked for directions to Lake Julian. I blinked. Once, twice. "I'm sorry," I said slowly. "Directions to where?" "Lake Julian," he repeated. "They said they were running late for a cookout." A cookout. I repeated it back to him, not because I didn't hear him. Because my brain refused to accept the shape of it. "Late for a cookout," he nodded, this time slower, more uncomfortable. "And the woman in the passenger seat," she laughed a little and said. He hesitated, like maybe he shouldn't finish. I held his gaze. "Go on." She said, "Claire will still be doing pictures. We can stop in after." And that's when it happened. Not a wave of pain, not a breakdown, not tears, clarity, sharp, precise, unavoidable. They hadn't gotten lost. They hadn't been delayed. They hadn't been stuck in traffic. They had arrived. They had seen the place. They had sat outside while I stood inside in a white dress waiting for them. And then they made a decision. They left. For a barbecue, not an emergency, not something urgent, not something important, a backyard cookout, folding chairs, paper plates, soda in coolers, someone flipping burgers on a grill. That's what my wedding ranked below. Do you know what makes something unforgivable? It's not just the hurt. It's the meaning behind the choice. If they had left for a hospital, I would have panicked. If someone was injured, I would have understood. But this meant my wedding was optional. It meant the first hour of my marriage was negotiable. It meant they believed they could show up late, after everything, and still call themselves supportive parents. The coordinator spoke gently. "Do you want to delay again?" Outside, I could hear movement, guests shifting, music waiting, life trying to continue. Inside me, everything had already changed. Then my phone buzzed. Another message from my mother. "Traffic is awful. Don't make a big deal if we miss the beginning, sweetheart. We'll come by after." I stared at the screen, at that word, sweetheart. It stopped looking like affection and started looking like strategy. Don't make a big deal. That had always been the rule. Don't make a big deal when Lauren gets the bigger room. Don't make a big deal when your birthday gets postponed. Don't make a big deal when your achievements get ignored. Don't make a big deal when your wedding becomes optional. Don't make a big deal about being treated like you don't matter. The valet was still standing there, frozen, like he had just handed me something he couldn't take back. I forced myself to smile. "Thank you," I said, because none of this was his fault. He left quickly, like he needed air. And then it was just me, the door, the bouquet in my hand, the clock on the wall, and the truth. This wasn't new, this wasn't shocking, this wasn't sudden. This was confirmation. They hadn't ruined my wedding yet. They had revealed exactly what it meant to them. And once something is that clear, you can't go back to pretending you misunderstood. I walked into the side prep room and closed the door behind me, quietly. Before anyone could say something kind enough to make me cry, the silence inside felt different, heavy, still, like the world had paused to see what I would do next. I set my bouquet down. Looked at my phone again, not because I needed proof, but because betrayal does something strange. It makes you double-check what you already know. I opened Instagram, then the family group chat. And there they were, not in traffic, not apologizing, not rushing toward me. At the barbecue, my cousin Tessa had already posted a bright, cheerful carousel of photos. Caption: family kickoff at the Lake Yellow Heart. Second photo, my father at the grill, smiling, wearing the apron I bought him 3 Christmases ago. Another, my mother holding a plastic cup. Arm wrapped around Lauren. The caption on that one read, "Finally, everybody together again." Everybody. I was 38 minutes away, in a wedding dress. And according to them, everybody was already there. That detail hurt more than anything else, because it meant my absence didn't change the picture. I wasn't central enough to be missing. The door opened behind me, soft, careful Naomi. She didn't ask questions, didn't waste time. She just looked at my face and said, "Tell me." And I did, not cleanly, not calmly, not beautifully. Just pieces, fragments. Parking lot cookout they left after. Don't make a big deal. She took my phone, scrolled, saw everything. Her expression shifted. Concern, confusion, then anger. Not messy anger, not dramatic anger. Clear, focused on my behalf. "Claire," she said slowly, "if they walk in here later expecting smiles and seats," she looked up at me, "I will personally turn them around so fast they won't remember how they got here." I should have been shocked. Instead, I laughed, short, sharp, real. Because for the first time, someone wasn't explaining them to me. They weren't saying, "They mean well. They're just like that. You know how your mom is." They were saying the truth. This is wrong, and something inside me finally felt seen. Naomi crouched in front of me, steady, present. "Claire," she said, "this isn't the first day they abandoned you." I swallowed, hard. "They've been doing it for years." Silence. "This is just the first day you can't pretend otherwise." She glanced at my dress. "Because now everyone can see it." That hit deeper than the photos. Because it was true. I had spent years waiting for context to fix them, waiting for timing to excuse them, waiting for circumstances to make it make sense. But some people don't change. They don't rise to the moment. They just reveal who they've always been. And standing there in white, I finally stopped asking, "Why would they do this?" And started asking, "What am I going to do now that I know?" Naomi reached into her purse, pulled out my lipstick, handed it to me, not like makeup, like identity, so I fixed my lipstick, picked up my bouquet, looked in the mirror, same dress, same face, same wedding day. But not the same woman. The one who walked into that room was still hoping. This one, she was done waiting. I texted the coordinator, "Start on time, no more delays." Then I sent another message. "If Richard and Carol Whittaker arrive, bring them to me first, quietly." And just like that, everything changed. The moment I sent that message, something inside me settled. It wasn't relief. It wasn't peace, it was control. The kind you don't get by fixing other people, but by finally choosing yourself. My hands stopped shaking first, then my breathing slowed. The noise outside the prep room, chairs moving, soft conversations, footsteps, stopped sounding like pressure and started sounding like life continuing. Without them. And somehow that didn't feel like loss anymore. It felt like truth. I picked up my bouquet again, rolled my shoulders back, looked at myself one last time in the mirror. My mascara was still perfect, my lipstick steady, but my eyes were different. Clear. For most of my life, I had confused hope with loyalty. I thought staying patient made me strong. I thought understanding made me good. I thought waiting meant love would eventually meet me halfway. But standing there in that dress with everything finally exposed, I saw it for what it really was. I had been abandoning myself just to keep them comfortable. Naomi opened the door. Didn't say anything, didn't need to, we both knew there was nothing left to explain. As we walked back toward the ceremony entrance, the music started again. A string quartet, soft, beautiful. Unchanged, guests were shifting in their seats, trying not to stare, trying not to ask questions, but a delayed ceremony always creates whispers, and a bride walking alone, that creates silence. The doors opened, and the entire room changed, not with pity, not with judgment, with attention, real attention. It moved through the room like a current. Conversations stopped instantly. Heads turned fully, not halfway, not politely, completely. For one suspended second, I felt exposed, like everyone could see everything. The absence, the story, the truth I hadn't said out loud. And then something unexpected happened. That exposure stopped feeling like humiliation and started feeling like power. I was still here, they were. Let people see that, let them wonder. Let them understand. Let them remember who showed up and who didn't. The aisle stretched in front of me, warm lights glowing overhead, Jasmine climbing the beams, and I walked it alone. Not slowly, not dramatically, steady. Halfway down I saw Naomi, already crying, Owen's mother, hands pressed to her chest. A colleague from the museum, looking at me like I had just done something extraordinary. Not because I looked beautiful, because I looked strong. And then I saw Owen. The moment he realized I was alone, his face changed. Concern, understanding, then something deeper, respect. Not embarrassment, not panic, respect. Like he knew this walk was costing me something. And I was taking it anyway. By the time I reached him, my throat was tight, burning. He took my hands, both of them. Leaned in just enough to whisper, "They don't get to touch this moment." My chest cracked open. "Do you hear me?" he said softly. "They don't get to have it." That almost broke me. Because that was it. That was what I had been protecting all along, without even realizing it. Not just the ceremony, the meaning of it. The right to have one moment in my life that didn't bend around their neglect. The officiant began speaking. I focused on her voice, on Owen's hands, on the light pouring through the glass walls. Slowly, the room stopped feeling like a place where I had been abandoned and started feeling like a place where I was being witnessed. That difference changed everything. When it was time for vows, I didn't shake. We had written them weeks ago. Simple, honest, but when my turn came, I added something, one line. I promised to build a home where nobody has to earn tenderness by being convenient. The words settled into the room. Some people understood immediately. I could feel it. Others just heard something poetic. That was fine. Owen understood. His eyes filled before he even started speaking. And when he made his promise, it wasn't rehearsed. "I promise you will never have to stand alone in a room full of people again." Something inside me loosened. Not healed, not completely, but enough to breathe. Enough to believe that my future didn't have to look like my past. When we kissed, the applause wasn't polite. It was real, loud, warm, intentional. The kind of applause that says, "We saw what happened, and we see you anyway." We walked back down the aisle together, and with every step, I felt myself leaving something behind, not just the moment. The version of me that kept waiting to be chosen. Cocktail hour began, soft music, golden light, glasses clinking. People came up to me one by one, hugging me a little tighter. Holding on a little longer. No one asked questions, no one forced sympathy. They gave me something better, dignity, and I will never forget that. Then the photographer approached, professional, calm. "Do you want to wait a bit longer for family photos? In case they arrive." That old version of me would have said yes, would have waited, delayed, adjusted, made space. But that version of me didn't walk down the aisle today. I looked at him and said, "No." Then I added, "Let's do the family portrait now." He nodded, "Just not by blood." He paused. Just for a second, then gave me a small, understanding nod, because some instructions don't need explanation. We gathered everyone: Naomi, Owen's parents, my friends, my colleagues. The people who showed up, the people who stayed, the people who chose us without hesitation. We stood under ivy and lantern light, closer, warmer, until something shifted. It stopped looking like a substitute for family and started looking like the real thing. The photographer showed me the preview, and for the first time that day, I felt something unexpected. Peace. There it is, I thought. That's my life. Not the one I kept trying to fix. The one I actually belong to. And then I did something I had never done before. I didn't overthink, didn't hesitate. Didn't ask permission. I posted the photo. Caption: "Thank you to the people who chose to be here today." Some seats were empty, but love has a way of filling what respect abandons. I didn't tag my parents, didn't explain, didn't defend. I didn't need to. The truth was already clear. I handed my phone to Naomi, took a glass of champagne, and turned toward my reception. For the first time all day, I wasn't waiting anymore. I was ready. And I had no idea. The fallout was already beginning. The fallout didn't wait. It never does. It started quietly. A single comment under the photo: Tessa. Of course it was Tessa. Wait, were Aunt Carol and Uncle Rick not there? I stared at it for exactly 2 seconds. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because for the first time in my life, I didn't feel the need to say anything at all. Then my phone buzzed again. Lauren. Why are you posting passive-aggressive stuff on your wedding day? Mom is upset. I actually laughed, out loud. Owen looked at me, confused. You okay? I nodded, still smiling, but it wasn't soft anymore. It was sharp, clear. There's something almost impressive about people who hurt you, and then immediately position themselves as the victim of your reaction. I typed back. They drove all the way to my venue, sat in the parking lot, and chose a barbecue over my ceremony. There's nothing passive about what I'm saying. I hit send. Then I muted her. Just like that, no arguing, no explaining, no chasing. And then I went to dinner. Because for once, their reaction wasn't the center of my day. The reception was beautiful, not perfect. Beautiful. There's a difference. Perfect is fragile. It shatters the moment something goes wrong. Beautiful adapts, breathes, survives. Owen's mother gave a toast. Short, sincere. The kind that doesn't try to impress anyone, just tells the truth. Half the room cried. Naomi followed. She turned my walk down the aisle, my alone walk, into something else entirely. Not abandonment, courage, strength, choice. And for the first time in my life, I heard my story told without being minimized. People laughed, danced, talked. The band played something warm and bright. Servers passed trays, champagne, crab cakes, tiny lemon tarts. At one point, I stepped outside. The air was cooler, quieter. The mountains stretched out in the distance, fading into deep blue. And I realized something I had never fully understood before. Heartbreak doesn't cancel joy. It stands beside it. I was hurt. Deeply, and still, I was happy. Both things existed at the same time. I think that's what adulthood really is. Not choosing one emotion over the other, but learning how to carry both. Then the coordinator approached me again. That same careful expression. But this time I didn't tense. I already knew. They're here, she said softly. Of course they were. Late, exactly as planned. Like my wedding was a stop on a schedule. Something they could drop into after something else felt more important. They're asking about the family table, she added. I almost smiled. Not because it was funny, because it was predictable. People like that don't mind disrespecting you. They mind when disrespect has consequences. I asked where they were. Side entrance. Near the kitchen. Of course, not walking in properly, not acknowledging anything, just appearing, expecting the world to adjust. I handed Owen my champagne glass. I'll handle this, I said. He didn't argue, didn't try to stop me. He just nodded. I'm right here if you need me. And that quiet, steady support meant more than any dramatic defense ever could. I lifted the hem of my dress, walked toward the back hallway, and there they were, my father red-faced, already irritated, my mother perfectly styled, slightly offended. Like someone who had arrived at an event and didn't like the seating arrangement, she spoke first. "Claire, what is going on? Your aunt sent me your post. People are calling." Not, "Are you okay?" Not, "We're sorry. People are calling." My father added, voice tight, controlled, "You embarrassed us." On my wedding day, they had missed everything. The vows, the walk, the moment. And still they made it about themselves. I looked at them, really looked, and felt nothing frantic, nothing desperate, just stillness. "You skipped my ceremony for a barbecue," I said. My voice didn't shake. "You sat outside my venue and decided it wasn't worth coming in." My mother gave a small laugh, that same soft, dismissive tone. "Oh, sweetheart, don't be dramatic." "We were going to come after," I nodded. "I know," I said, "that's exactly the problem." Silence. My father stepped closer, lowered his voice. "Are you seriously going to make this into something bigger than it is?" Something bigger. I almost admired it. Years of neglect, favoritism, disappointment, reduced to something small. "This isn't about tonight," I said. "Tonight is just the last receipt." That landed. I saw it in their faces. Because for the first time, I wasn't reacting. I was remembering. My mother's expression shifted. Not soft, not apologetic, controlled. "You're punishing us," she said quietly, "in front of the whole family." I shook my head. "No," I said. "You did that yourselves." My father exhaled sharply. "So what, you're just going to keep us out?" "Yes," I said, simple, clear, final, and then I added something they weren't expecting. "Also, I withdrew from the lake house project." Silence. "What?" my father said. "You'll see the email," I replied. 3 months earlier, he had asked for my help, budgets, vendors, plans. I had spent weeks organizing everything, making it work, because in my family, my skills were always free, my time always expected, my effort always available, until now. "I'm no longer involved," I said. "Effective immediately." My mother went pale. That project was their future, their investment, their pride, and they had assumed I would carry it, like always. "Are you really doing this over one misunderstanding?" my father asked. That word again. Misunderstanding. I almost smiled. "No," I said. "I'm just finally charging the right price for access to me." Silence. "And you can't afford it anymore." That's when my mother's voice broke. "I can't believe you're doing this to us on your wedding day." That sentence said everything. Even now, this day was about them. Not me, never me, so I gave them the truth without softening it. Without protecting them from it. "You taught me that effort follows value," I said. "You gave yours to Lauren." I paused, let it land. "Now I'm doing the same. My effort goes where I'm valued." I stepped back. "Not here, not anymore." My father went quiet. My mother looked stunned, not hurt, surprised. Like she had just discovered a rule she didn't know could be broken. I turned to the coordinator. "Please get their coats." And then I walked away. Behind me, my mother called my name. The way she used to when I was little. The way that used to make me turn around instantly. This time, I didn't. Because sometimes, not looking back is the first real act of self-respect. I didn't look back. Not when my mother called my name. Not when the door closed behind me. Not even when the music from the reception grew louder again, like nothing had happened. Because something had. Something permanent. For most of my life, I thought strength meant enduring. Staying quiet. Keeping peace. I thought being the bigger person meant absorbing whatever hurt came my way and calling it love. But standing there in that hallway, walking away from my parents on my wedding night, I finally understood something no one had ever taught me. Love without respect is just access. And family without accountability is just habit wearing sentimental clothes. When I stepped back into the reception, nothing had collapsed. No whispers, no chaos, no dramatic silence. People were still laughing, still dancing, still celebrating. The world hadn't ended just because I stopped tolerating what hurt me. That realization alone felt like freedom. Owen found me near the dance floor. He didn't ask 100 questions, didn't push, didn't analyze. He just slipped his hand around my waist. "You okay?" he asked softly. I nodded. Not because everything was fine, but because for the first time, I wasn't pretending anymore. That counted for something. "Ready for cake," he smiled. I looked around the room. At Naomi laughing near the band. At my friends gathered around the dessert table. At candlelight reflecting off the greenhouse glass. At the life I had built without waiting for permission. And I said, yes, not because the pain was gone, not because I had healed instantly, but because the story had changed. It wasn't about whether my parents loved me correctly anymore. It was about what I would do, now that I knew they never had. And what I did next changed everything. I stopped volunteering to be overlooked. I stopped fixing relationships that only worked when I stayed silent. I stopped confusing endurance with love. I went on my honeymoon. And somewhere over the ocean between one country and another, I blocked 3 numbers. Not dramatically, not angrily, just quietly, like closing a door that had been left open too long. When I came back, I felt lighter, not because everything was resolved, but because I wasn't carrying what wasn't mine anymore. The messages still came. Lauren called twice, then texted. "You're overreacting. Mom is really hurt. This could have been handled privately." I didn't respond, because for years everything had been handled privately. That was the problem. Silence protects patterns, and I was done protecting something that was breaking me. A few days later, an aunt I barely spoke to sent a message. Just one line, "I'm sorry we all let this happen for so long." I stared at it for a while. Because sometimes the truth doesn't come from the people who hurt you, it comes from the people who watched and said nothing. And even that was a kind of closure. The lake house project fell apart within weeks. Missed deadlines, confused contractors, budget mistakes, things I would have fixed without anyone even noticing. My father emailed once. Short, cold. "We didn't expect this from you." I read it, then deleted it, because for the first time their expectations didn't define my choices. That was new, that was everything. Life didn't become perfect after that, it became honest. And honesty is a different kind of peace. Some days still hurt. Not because I regret what I did, but because I finally allowed myself to feel what I had ignored for years. Grief doesn't disappear just because you set boundaries. It changes shape. It becomes quieter, more manageable, less confusing, and slowly it makes space for something better, real connection, the kind that doesn't require you to shrink, or prove, or perform. Owen never once asked me to fix things with my family. He never said, "They're still your parents." He said something better. "I trust you to know what's healthy for you." That trust rebuilt something in me, because for most of my life I had been taught not to trust my own feelings, to question them, minimize them, explain them away. But now I didn't need to. I had seen the truth clearly. And once you see something that clearly, you can't unsee it. Months later, I came across that wedding photo again. The one with my chosen family, everyone close. Laughing, real, no empty spaces, no pretending, just people who showed up. And I realized something that changed me all over again. That photo didn't feel like something was missing. It felt complete, because love, real love, isn't about who's supposed to be there, it's about who actually is. On the night of my wedding, my parents chose a barbecue over my ceremony. By the next morning, they had lost something they didn't even realize they were depending on. Not just my help. Not just my patience. Me, the version of me that kept waiting, the daughter who made excuses, the fixer, the quiet one, she didn't come back, and the woman who replaced her. She didn't beg to be included. She didn't chase approval. She built a life where she was already enough. So if you've ever felt like the background in your own family, if you've ever been told to not make a big deal about something that broke your heart, listen carefully. The moment you stop accepting less will feel like loss at first, but it is. It's clarity, and clarity is where everything better begins.